Hello, welcome to Staring into the Abyss. I'm your host, Richard Gerlach. With me, as always, is Matt Brandenburg.
Yeah!
And joining us as well, as usual, is Vitlame Mist.
Yeah, I'm just trying not to look at the things in the woods here, so hi!
Giant spider people.
Special guest and author of The Dissonance is Shaun Hamill.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And today's episode is going to be a special episode where we discuss his novel, The Dissonance, which came out last week and can be available wherever you buy your books at.
Yeah.
I gotta say, Shaun, I love the cover of the book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do too. I feel like I've gotten really lucky on both my novel covers so far with Pantheon. They do a nice job.
That's awesome.
It's so important to have a good cover because that is what draws people.
Yeah.
I know people say don't judge a book by its cover, but that's horseshit when it comes to good books.
I mean, when it comes to marketing them, absolutely. Yeah, that's what grabs somebody's attention. So
Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree, don't judge a book by its cover because it's what's inside the book, but the first thing you see is the cover. The cover is the advertisement. And you want to advertise your book strong. You want your cover to pop, you want it to gain interest. Like the bright colors already on the cover, the blend of colors, that's going to pop out on an Amazon list when you're going down. Your eye's going to be drawn to that, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that for both books, it's been sort of interesting because when I have been presented with my cover, I always scratch my head a little bit and I'm like, is this what we're doing? And then it gradually grows on me. And what I've learned about myself through this process is I have no eye or mind for design whatsoever. Like it's so good that there are professionals handling this for me because it's not what I would pick, but what I would pick would suck, I think. And this is so much better.
I so understand what you mean. It's like, even though, I draw, but I can't do graphic design for shit. And I usually look to the people who knows what the market is about, and I completely trust them on that.
Yeah.
Like, my ideas might be okay, but then when I try to put them on paper, it's awful.
Well, and it's funny too because you spend, writing it, you spend all this time and you have the scenes that you like in your book and you're like, oh, this would be awesome. And like when they put the cover out, you're kind of like, well, that wasn't the scene I'd pick, but this makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I'd had my druthers, it would have looked more like an old 1970s like Frank Frazetta paperback cover or something,
Yeah.
Because I don't know how much of it shows up in the final novel, but Robert E. Howard was very much on my mind writing this book. So like I would have picked something with the blade of woe, something with the sword. But I think that this is so much more indicative of the book I actually wrote rather than the inspirations in my head. So good job, Pantheon.
Yeah, I will say essence.
I will say that the Blade of Woe and Temple of Pain are very Robert E. Howard like things.
Absolutely, yeah. I was trying to get my Conan fix in there, I guess.
That's where the phrase comes. Yeah.
I appreciate it because this past year has been a lot of Conan reading for me, and so when and we'll get into the book soon, but that quote in the yearbook, I was like, this is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, it is really funny because I don't even know why, but yeah, this year I read multiple of the big Robert E. Howard collections, and so like it must just be in the world right now for people to read that kind of stuff.
It was written in the universe.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Or the multiverse.
Before we dive fully in, or the multiverse, yeah. Before we dive fully into the Dissonance, we should probably give our weekly rundowns.
Oh yeah.
And then, my voice just cracked. What was up with that? We should probably give our weekly rundowns and then dive deep into our discussion. But going first, the big thing for me this week is I went to the movies last night to see Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie.
So
how was George Hartnett? To be fair, I'm glad that he's back to acting because he is a really good actor.
He played the most charming serial killer ever.
Ah, God damn it!
But that's why Josh Hartnett's got the role. I will say this: the people complaining that the movie spoils that he's a serial killer in the trailer.
Yeah.
The movie gives it away in the first 10 minutes. It's not a spoiler. That's the premise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, having not seen the movie but just seeing the trailer, it feels very Hitchcockian and like, we're gonna set you up with who this is, and now you have to like, I'm assuming get out. I'm assuming he's in some sort of trap by chance.
Yes, he is in some sort of trap.
I mean, yeah, like, I don't know why people were getting mad at it, because for me, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this is giving me a reason to see this movie because that looks interesting.
Yeah.
So this is M. Night Shyamalan's most Hitchcock-inspired movie.
Okay.
It is a cat and mouse thriller of a serial killer who takes his daughter to a concert, only to find out that this concert is being staked out by the FBI. And now that he's inside this concert and trapped, he's trying to find a way out. And
how did they know he was going to be there?
Well, that's a spoiler, but I can tell you if you want.
No, it's fine. It just came out. Let it.
So that is answered in the movie that they know he's going to be there. And also, two other things about it. It's also a vanity project because the main focus of the movie is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, who's a singer. And the Lady Raven character is his daughter. And she wrote all the songs for the movie.
No.
Which she actually is a pop singer in real life. So like it kind of makes sense. But it is totally like a vanity project. Like 100%. It's entertaining as hell, but it is a vanity project.
Is she popular?
I know she has an album out and she has a record deal. I haven't heard too many of her songs on the radio, but I'm also 36 years old and don't really listen to that kind of music.
Yeah.
So there's that. I will say the songs in the movie aren't bad. Like they're good. It's not like it's crappy pop music, but it's still just kind of like pop music, you know?
Yeah.
That's really interesting because his other daughter just had her directorial. Ishana had her first film come out this year, The Watchers, just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
So both the Shyamalan girls are getting their time in the spotlight this year.
Making some use of their father's money.
Help.
I mean, he was for his other daughter. He produced that movie, so I mean, like, he's still attached to it.
Okay.
Did you guys see that movie?
I did not. I heard it was okay until the ending, and then it was terrible.
Yeah, I didn't like it, but I think that it shows a lot of potential. So I'm hoping that like she grows into it a bit.
What I heard is, as a director, like the movie is directed well. I just heard the script's a mess.
I would say that's fair. And it's interesting because it's based on a novel, and I think the novelist co-wrote the screenplay. But it does something. I mean, I don't want to get too far off track, but it does kind of a high. Like, this is the thing, people complaining about Trap giving away its premise in the trailer. Like, Watchers kind of hides the ball until the final act, and then once you see what the ball is, you're like, oh, that is not what I signed up for. So I feel like there's no winning in these kind of situations, at least with the audience.
Yeah.
I'd say err on the side of giving away your premise.
I also say, like, I don't think him being a serial killer is a spoiler just because it's in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Right.
So if it's given away that early,
is,
it's not really a spoiler in my opinion. The main focus is the cat and mouse aspect of it. I will say that because it's a cat and mouse thriller, it's also very convoluted at times, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. But the one thing I will also say is it is M. Night Shyamalan's funniest movie. It is hysterical. there's so many good comedic moments in that movie that like, and like it's purposely funny. It's not like funny, like bad funny. It's like you're meant to laugh. Like it's honestly his funniest, earnest attempt at comedy in his movies. Like, like this is just like a slight spoiler, but like there's a point in the movie where he's talking to the merch guy to buy a shirt for his daughter, and he uses that to kind of charm the merch guy and get information out of him. And then the merch guy tells him information. And then later on in the movie, the merch guy finds out he's a serial killer, and he's like, "I'm never talking to anyone at work again." Like,
nice.
So it's like little moments like that. I think work well. Also, I will say before I move on, it's Allison Pill. She's in it too. She's fantastic in the movie.
I love her.
Also gave a really great performance. Yeah, she shows up in the second half of the movie, but her performance is really good. Josh Hartnett steals the scene. Like, he's so charming. But Allison Pills, her moments in the movie are really, really solid.
Nice.
And also, it's getting bad reviews, but I think it's better than the reviews are saying about it. I think if you want to see M. Night Shyamalan do a cat and mouse Hitchcock-style thriller, this is that. And it's exactly what it advertises itself as. Also, I will say one last thing is he has a cameo.
Of course.
Of course.
And it's actually a speaking cameo this time. And it is very funny.
Okay.
So, but Matt, what about you?
Oh, man, that's really funny. Is it worth seeing in the theater?
I mean, I would say you probably wait till a video, in all honesty. I am a big M. Night fan, so I go see his movies in the theater anyway.
Yeah.
But I think it'll work just fine on video.
And like I know theaters are dying, and it's probably a terrible question to ask, but you know, sometimes it's also very expensive to go to a movie, so figured I'd check.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, I did have I'll get to this later, but I had my first Alamo Drafthouse experience.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
So theaters can get quite pricey, but
oh god, yeah. When we had one way back in the day, Kalamazoo actually had an Alamo Drafthouse, which was very shocking to like everybody, but it was cool when it was there. Yes, you just don't realize the pricing when you're writing down in the middle of a movie. You're like, yeah, I want that chocolate chip cookie, and I want the cheesesteak, and I want the Mexican milkshake. So, yeah, and then you look at the bill at the end, and you're like, oh crap. But anyway, I reading. I'm like almost done, like 10 pages to being finished. Patrick Barb's The Children's Horror, which
I need to read that one.
Okay, yeah. How is it?
It is amazing. It just came out probably 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. It's fairly new, but anyway, it's a collection of short stories, and all the short stories are Pat's takes on children's shows. And if you've read Patrick Barb, you know he's got a nice twisted, weird mind. So everything you can imagine is twisted and weird. And the like. He says this like in the intro, I think, or he said it somewhere where it was during COVID. His kids were watching a lot of kids shows. And so he decided to give himself a writing challenge, which was write weird stories based on all the shows they were watching. And that's where this comes up. And the kind of wrapper, because it's not really like interconnected stories. None of the stories are tied to each other, but there is like a wrapper to it, which is like these kids in a school like gain this power, and they kind of take over the school and possibly more. And then because they're small children, they kind of force two teachers to take them into like an auditorium to watch kids shows. And so that's kind of the wrappers. We're watching all these shows with them, and they cover everything. He covers everything. He's got a Pokemon story, a PJ Mask, Wildcats, Baby Shark, and Clifford the Big Red Dog. And these are all like, it's, I don't know all kid shows, so luckily in the back he kind of tells you what it's sort of based off of, and so that helps a bit. But like the Pokemon story was the first story, and you could tell right away it's this like about Pikachu trying to be a human, and so he's gone through all these surgeries, and Ash, or in this story it's Cash needs him to catch Mew, which is like, the whatever Pokemon.
Legendary.
Yes. And so so it's sort of that way, but you realize like the horror of trapping these Pokemon into like the orb thing, and they're all kind of stuck in there and crazy, and Cash is just this terrible person who he's an adult in this, but he still dresses like he does in the cartoon. And it's just like this really torturous thing, and I loved it all the way through. There is a story about that Baby Shark song, in which a woman is pregnant with a shark and is slowly turning into a shark herself. And
dear God.
Yeah, so you got, and then he does these things and that are just so amazing, and you don't realize like I said, if you don't know these kids shows, like it's fine because the story stands on its own. It's just that fun little bit that you kind of get into, and you're like, oh, I get this, I remember this, or I've seen this before, and this is definitely a weird way to take it. So it is like, it is super awesome. I'm loving everything about it. Patrick Barb is like one of these underrated or just below the surface writers, where he's going to be big, and I think he deserves to be big, but we just haven't seen his name pop up in these higher levels yet. But it's going to happen soon, because this was just genius. So The Children's Horror by Patrick Barb.
Perfect. Yeah, and he's also from the podcast. I need to get on my way of reading that one very soon. Vitlame, what about you?
So I actually went to see Longlegs the other day.
Oh, I saw it.
You put on your long legs today?
Yeah. though they don't fit. So they're just hanging loose.
They're just hanging loose.
What did you think of Longlegs?
So I hate when I do get caught up in the hype, because it does really, raise your expectations so much. And there was this one guy on TikTok who I'm not following, but I usually get his TikToks a lot when I'm just scrolling. And he's like a horror film reviewer, and he was just hyping this movie so much. He's like, I went to and deciphered the code, and I just did this on the website, and this is so fucking mind blowing. And I'm like, okay, shit, that sounds amazing. So I went to see it, and I did know that it gave off, the vibes of the Silence of the Lambs and stuff, because it wasn't like, it's not advertised as much horror, but it's like a mixture of everything. It's kind of like a genre breaker. And I did enjoy it. It was really uncomfortable to watch at times.
It's so uncomfortable.
Like the music made me feel squeamish.
Yeah, the music was excellent.
It was like the soundtrack, it was amazing. I've never felt more uncomfortable at a movie theater. And Nicolas Cage deserves an Oscar for his performance, because that was the best Nicolas Cage I've ever seen. Never been so uncomfortable by that man till I saw him in this movie.
Bobby!
Dear God. Just when he starts to sing, I'm like, no. I just kind of wanted to be Micah and just back away up against the wall. Like, can I just go now, please? Can I get an adult?
Oh my God.
It was really, it was like his performance was definitely worth going to see this in the movie, like in the theater. But I would not say it's like the best horror film I've seen.
Yeah.
But it gave me the creeps. It has a really good like tone. And I don't know if this was intentional or not. If it was because like of the trauma or anything like that. But I felt like the character that Micah Monroe was like portraying felt super autistic to me.
Yeah.
It's like
I think
this is
part
like
of it's
this.
because of the trauma that
I think
been...
I think it is because of the trauma. But for me, I was like, this is like the best portrayal of autistic person, like a female autistic person I've ever seen.
I think she was fantastic in the role too. Like she was really good in the movie.
It was really good, yeah. And I enjoyed the fact that it was like had hints of the satanic panic, but not that much. It was like it was kind of like portraying the end of the satanic panic.
Did you notice that the devil was following her the entire movie?
Who? The devil.
The devil
Yeah.
Was
I
following
saw it.
her the entire movie.
Yeah,
like...
I saw it. I saw that. It was because of the contract. He was like, I can't get you, but I can still, follow you.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Yeah. For that whole like devil part, like I need to rewatch it because that's what I heard. He's like in almost every scene. And I was like, I didn't notice that.
I saw it twice. There's 14 times I noticed it, but I only noticed it in the first viewing twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed it
on the
twice.
second viewing, I noticed it more.
Yeah.
So that's fun. I like that. I like that play with it.
I thought it was also really interesting that the one who played her mother, she, for me, she was so alike Jodie Foster when she was young.
Yeah, she was giving off big Jodie Foster vibes in that role. Yeah.
Right? I was like, this is a really good nod to Silence of the Lambs. That was the intention.
Yeah, I think so. That was cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like the more I sat with it, I think I needed to like, because right after seeing it, I was kind of like, all right, well, that was cool. It felt like there was some stuff that kind of got just crammed in there or not explained. But then the longer I sat with it, I was like, yeah, it's kind of disturbing. And like, I don't want to spoil it because I know it's new, but there's a certain thing in there that I absolutely am horrified of. And so that wasn't fun, but that's beside the point.
Oh, the dolls?
I don't want to spoil it for people, but yeah, the dolls were not. I was like, oh God. It was just like, I don't want this.
They just had to make it, life size too.
I know. It was just like, I was, yeah, that was.
Yeah, my husband, he's really uncomfortable by dolls. So when that scene come, I just had to look at him like, are you okay?
Yeah, it's just like, oh God, like I can handle the weirdness of Nicolas Cage, but and like the murder stuff, but I was like, why do you have to put dolls in it? Like, that's not cool.
Because they do the job. They're making you uncomfortable.
Oh man, but yeah, no, it's cool. And it's funny that you bring up the soundtrack because I was like, I'm a big soundtrack person, so like after the movie, I had to listen to it, and it's just frightening on its own. So be ready for that.
It really is. It's really uncomfortable. I'm also like my emotions like get heightened whenever like I listen to something. So yeah. This one did the job of making me like super unsettled, like, yeah, I want to listen to something happy now.
I will say it was a lot better. I'm like, I've only seen 3 of Osgood Perkins movies, and this one I think was my favorite, and then Black Coat's Daughter, and then I did not like Gretel and Hansel. That one.
He did that movie?
Yeah,
he did that movie.
It was not a good movie.
No, thank you.
Another bad one he did is I'm the Pretty Thing Lives in the House. I'd avoid skipping that. I'd recommend skipping that one too.
Okay.
I remember like watching Hansel and Gretel. I'm like, this is boring. You made a really good concept and a really good story. Like fairy tale, boring.
Yeah, I think what got, and we can keep going, but just I got really mad just about like the random voiceover telling us things that like
the exposition thing.
Yeah, it was like you could show us that they're hungry or whatever, but instead you got to tell us we were hungry.
It's just lazy writing. It's just lazy writing.
Yeah.
Just to put exposition in it. I'm like, when I hear that, like, and this is going back to my rant with Rebel Moon, I was like, yep, it's gonna be bad.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the rants right now to keep the podcast moving forward.
I know, I can handle myself. I can know how to stop myself.
But just to let you know, before I move on to Shaun, the director's cuts for Rebel Moon are out with LeMay, so have fun with those.
No, I'm not gonna waste 2 or 4 hours of my life watching that shit.
Wait, director's cut of what? Rebel Moon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I still haven't seen it.
Don't.
It's bad.
Save yourself.
It's just, and we can keep going, but it's just such a Zack Snyder, like, I don't know, shtick at this point. Oh, he's gonna have a director's cut. It's like, all right, dude.
Apparently, and then we'll move on to you, Shaun. These movies are the exact same movies with less slow-mo and a lot more gore and sex.
Of course, because he's a 12-year-old boy.
Yep. He's a 12-year-old edgelord.
Yeah.
But Shaun, what about you for the last week?
So I reading wise, I actually just got an arc because I found out it's sort of a last minute thing. I'm doing an event with Gabino Iglesias here in Dallas on Wednesday, and I got an arc of his new book, House of Bone and Rain. And I just started it yesterday. I'm only about 100 pages in, but it's fantastic. I'm loving it. I also just read John Fram's new book. I don't know if you read his first book, The Brightlands, which is a really good, like, football team in small town Texas has a dark secret. He kind of does.
I've heard good things about that book.
Yeah, it's really good. And his new one is about this man who's sort of married. It's called No Road Home, and it came out the same day as my book. So we did an event together in Houston last week. It's about this man who marries into this family of like televangelists and goes home with his new wife and his probably gay son. He's still very little. So like, you know, obviously he hasn't made that call yet, but like it seems pretty obvious that, you know, he should early signs to this very conservative household. And then they get stuck in this house and the patriarch of the family, the televangelist, you know, their Billy Graham or whatever, is murdered. And it just sort of all spirals out from there. And it's what I like about John Fram's books, both of them so far, is he kind of does the thriller thing, but he overlaps it with supernatural horror. And so, which is more my bag than the thriller thing. But I think he rides that line in a really cool way. So both of those, I would definitely recommend. I got to read both early because of the events, but I recommend both very highly.
Man, what was the title of the televangelist one?
No Road Home.
It sounded awesome.
Yeah, check it out.
Those both sound great.
I love that concept.
Yeah, with Gabino's new book, I didn't read a synopsis or anything. I just started reading it, but it also kind of I think his fiction tends to ride that line between like crime fiction and supernatural horror as well, and that seems to be what he's doing here. And he's just such a great stylist anyway. He's got such a great voice. You know, it's just a real pleasure to read. Like the pages just fly. So yeah, that's out Tuesday. So I highly recommend it to everybody and anybody.
Nice.
Well, I added both those to my list. And I will say, just real quick to keep this moving forward, I ended up seeing Deadpool Wolverine last week.
I saw that too.
Oh, how was it?
Honestly, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's stupid. The plot's kind of nonsensical, but it's what you want out of a Deadpool Wolverine movie.
Yeah.
And it's also probably the most R-rated Deadpool movie yet. Like they really pushed it with Disney.
They did.
In regards to everything?
Just
yes.
Yeah.
So we're seeing their penises?
No,
that's not pushing it then.
But the opening scene pretty much has Deadpool fisting a guy with Wolverine's claws and then stabbing another guy in the dick with Wolverine's claws.
No, that's not. I need their penises.
There's no
Then
penis.
it's reaching my quota, you know.
There's no boobs
Because
either.
you can always get on a lot of warrants. For some reason, they put R on that, but nudity and people just cluster pearl necklaces. But
I mean, it's still Disney.
Yeah.
There
I
is
will say
a limit.
that
they have parental figure dying in every single one of their movies. They can handle a few penises.
I will say though, the cameos in this movie, they were perfect. Like they did. Like there's a few movies, like you know what, those cameos are perfect.
Yeah, it was good.
I won't spoil any of the cameos for those who haven't seen it, but
I haven't seen it. Maybe a spoiler, but I'm feeling like Gambit is going to be a thing.
I don't want to say anything.
I don't want to say anything either.
You just have to
I've said, like, social media kind of ruins everything for you when it comes to movies nowadays. So yeah,
I'm pretty sure you've probably seen the meme by this point. Then
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. Luckily, like Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, like voice and shtick are pulled back just enough where I can handle it.
Yeah,
but and he's still great. I'll just say that. But like, he does a certain thing with his voice when he plays that character that after a while you're like, I just can't listen to his voice anymore. But he doesn't do it like that in this, so that's good.
He can't because he has to mellow it down for Hugh because otherwise Hugh was going to kill him.
Also, Hugh Jackman's so good in this movie too.
He is great.
I love seeing Hugh Jackman play Wolverine one last time.
I was going to say, do you think he's going to play him? Continue playing him?
Probably.
No. I don't think so.
I think from what I've been hearing, and like they're teasing adamantium in the new Captain America movie. And then they got some plans for the next two big Avengers ones. So I have a feeling he might show up for a minute in those big ones, but then he'll probably be done. But
yeah, I don't know. I could go on all day with the new stuff, and that's about it for me. And Matt, if you have anything else, feel free.
Yeah, just a quick second. I'm reading Joe Koch's Invaginies. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's his new collection. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm nowhere close to being done, so I can't give a full rundown, but what he writes is absolutely amazing. And it's so trippy and weird, and that he can do this really gross, weird thing, describing of body horror things happening. And yeah, I don't want to. Again, I haven't finished it, but I definitely recommend picking that one up. Joe's amazing. So that's Sweet. It for me.
And then Vitlamay, any last things from you?
Yeah, I finished watching What We Do in the Shadows, season 5.
Oh, nice.
Love that show.
It just gave me so much serotonin. It was amazing. Just hearing Matt Berry's voice again, it was just, I need a Laszlo. Everyone needs a Laszlo in their life.
Yes. Last season is this year.
I'm so sad.
I know. I don't want them to end. And I wonder, how the hell are they going to end?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I saw behind the scenes footage of Matt Berry crying after giving a final speech to the cast and crew and everything.
I saw it too. It was sad.
I was like, "Aw." But no, I'm excited to see the last season. I'm definitely sad that the last season's happening, but it's kind of cool that it's not going on super, super long, but just enough, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have that end on a high than end on a low.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of like, when you knew, with A Good Place, you thought you wanted more, but how they ended it was just such a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh,
and
yeah, The Good Place ending.
Oh yeah. Best ending ever. Yeah, I cried my eyes out.
Yeah, me and my husband, we were just sobbing messes afterwards. But in a good way. But in a good way. We were sad because it like kind of connected to our trauma, but at the same time I was like, it's such a good fucking show. I'm glad they ended it like they wanted to end it. Like it didn't get like task out by the executives.
And Shaun, do you have any last things?
I know I'm a little late to the party on this, but I'm almost done with Scavenger's Reign, that animated series on Max. I think it's on Netflix.
Scavenger's Reign's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm in episode 10 right now. I've been watching it in little bits and pieces, just as time allows. But it's just the imagery in that show is incredible. It's exactly what I want out of weird sci-fi.
It doesn't have a lot of hype, which is sad.
The character arcs in that show are fantastic too.
Yeah, what I love about it too is it's a very quiet show. Like you really have to pay attention. You can't just play on your phone and listen. You have to watch it to understand what's going on. Like it rewards your attention. Like it takes full advantage of the fact that it's in a visual medium. It's really and the character arcs are kind of sneaky, right? Like they're not like telegraphed. It's like suddenly you just get hit with something and it's like, oh man, ouch. Like it's really, really top tier storytelling. And I'm very curious. I have a friend who's already finished it and he says that he'd be happy with where they left it if they don't do anymore. So I'm very curious to see how it ends, whether that door is left open or it's closed. And so I'm hoping to finish it up this weekend before I have to get back to book, hustling.
Yeah. I will say I watched it when it was on Max, and then I watched it again on Netflix. And just because Netflix has a chance to pick it up for another season.
Oh.
I'd love a second season, but I'd also be happy just having this one solid one and done. But I do know if Netflix sees the numbers, they did express interest in doing a second season.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, which is why I watched it twice. But
do them a solid, yeah.
And plus, it's just a great show. Like it's so good. The animation's incredible, and just like I love the interconnectivity of like all the creatures and the species and how like they all kind of work together. It's interesting.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of like my favorite movie is Alien, the original, and my favorite part of Alien is when they're in the derelict spacecraft. And I know Prometheus answers all those questions, sort of, but with watching that movie for the first time as a kid and just being like, "What the hell is this thing?"
Yeah.
And this gets at that vibe, and I mean, it's not going for as overt a horror theme, but that sense of like. When they're, I think it's in like episode 6, when they're in the middle of that like hive or whatever, and there's the tiny thing that like lives an entire life and dies in front of their eyes, and it's just like, what the hell was that? Just that kind of stuff is exactly what I want. Like, that. Like, I know it's not cosmic horror, but it's tapping into that cosmic horror of like, this is so much bigger and weirder than you can understand. But it also does seem to obey, like you were saying, its own internal rules. Even if it's not explaining them, it is playing by them, which I thought was really cool.
That's awesome.
Oh, no, definitely. It's such a really cool like show and really cool animation. And I will say, if you kind of like the whole like dark, lost in space sci-fi thing, a movie I'd recommend that is on Hulu right now is Aniara.
Okay.
It's a Swedish movie that is about a interstellar cruise ship that's going from Earth to Mars and gets pushed off track. And is then set into the darkness of space.
It's called Aniara?
Yeah, Aniara.
Okay. I just wrote it down.
It is super depressing. You're probably gonna feel like shit after the movie's done, but it's worth the experience.
Sold.
Yeah, all right.
It's a great movie. It's a feel bad movie. Like you don't leave that experience feeling happy.
That is okay by me. I love the Alien franchise, and a lot of my favorite entries are definitely what you would call feel bad movies. So.
Oh, no, 100%. But why don't we switch gears and hop into talking about the Dissonance?
Yeah.
And before we get started, why don't you give our audience kind of a rundown of what the Dissonance is about?
Yeah.
Shaun.
So it's a I would call it a dark fantasy bordering horror novel about a group of friends who, as teenagers, discover that magic is real, but they don't use that word for it. But it's the closest shortcut to explain to somebody who hasn't read the book. But it's based on the idea that there is something broken in the fundament of existence. There is a tension between how things should be and how they actually are, and that tension generates an energy field that can be manipulated, but only by people who are themselves a little bit, and I'm putting air quotes around this, broken. So people who are maybe mentally ill or neurodivergent or just carrying a lot of trauma. Basically, people who are outsiders tend to be the ones who can actually use it. And so it's about this group of outsiders who are friends, who were already sort of drawn to each other because of their outsiderness, who learn to use this power. And so we watch their early adventures and kind of how they grow and level up with these powers. But we're also intercutting with the story of them as adults coming back to their hometown after 20 years away. And after something really terrible has happened to them, and having to sort of deal with the unquiet ghosts of their past. And so it's sort of, that's sort of the elevator pitch.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, it's simply the very accurate of what happens in the book, which I will say the book is a very good time. It's very interesting, but I really like the whole aspect of the dissonance that you created. Like I liked just seeing how the characters learned about how to harness the dissonance and how it came out to be was very interesting.
Well, thank you very much. Oh, go ahead.
How long did it take you to come up with that? Like this is like asking a fantasy writer, like, hey, how did you come up with your magic system?
Well, that's a good question. I'd been wanting to write a fantasy novel for a long time, but I didn't know, like, I didn't have a way in. I didn't know what the hook was, what would make mine stand apart, at least in my own mind, from everything else. And it was basically after my first novel, A Cosmology of Monsters, came out, and a lot of the reviews pointed out that the book, and I mean, it makes sense, but I guess I hadn't thought about it that much. A lot of the book's reviews pointed out how much the book dealt with the horror of mental illness. And so I kind of started playing with that idea of mental health or just general neurodivergence, and how that might play into the idea of magic. I also, a lot of my favorite fantasy novels, like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, or the Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman, really deal with what I would call wild magic, which is, it's always weirder and stranger than you think it's going to be. There are unforeseen consequences. It takes a heavy toll. It's dark. It's weird. It's horrific in a lot of ways. And I wanted to kind of play with that as well. And so all of that sort of coalesced during COVID, when I was self-isolating and living alone in this apartment. And missing my friends. I was living in Alabama, and everybody I knew was back in Texas. I'd just gone through this divorce. And so sort of that yearning to be with my friends and reflecting on what drew us together. Like, I've had the same group of friends since I was 14. And, we were all sort of outsiders who kind of found each other and have stayed friends over the last, we're coming up on 27 years now. It's been since, we've been friends since 1997. The same basic group of people, and all of that kind of coalesced into this idea. I wish I had like some great like aha, this was the moment, but I think it was sort of a gradual evolution. Like I was pitching my agent different ideas, and finally this is what clicked. And he was like, yeah, this, and I was like, okay, great. And I was off to the races at that point.
That's pretty cool. It reminded me. I don't know if you do you watch a lot of anime?
I actually don't. I'm trying to rectify that now. I have a friend. We're doing anime club on Friday nights. We just watched Spirited Away last night, so he's kind of easing me in.
Yeah. Okay. There is an anime that is called Darker Than Black.
Oh, I've got Darker Than Black and Forever.
It's so good though.
Yeah, it is really good.
And like how they do their magic, it's I can't say it's similar, but it reminds me of the Dissonance magic system. In how like in Darker Than Black, the way they need to conjure up their powers is that they have to take something from themselves, and it kind of like manifests into mental illness like symptoms.
Interesting. I gotta check this out.
Like for example, like one girl, in order to shoot like lightning, she has to pick strands out of off her hair. And if she wants to do like a really powerful one, she has to grab a clump of hair to do it.
Jeez.
That ouch.
yeah, and like some people, they have to hurt themselves to conjure something, and one person like had to like pick at their skin, and it was like it all kind of like had to it was kind of like this, you have to deal this in order to do this, like kind of like the equivalent with alchemy.
Yeah. I and that's something, if I ever get to do sequels, I'd love to explore a little bit more, is like, what does it really cost to do the more powerful stuff? It's a concept that I didn't get to delve as deep into in this book as I think I would have liked. But yeah, stuff like exactly what you're talking about. I'll have to watch that show. That sounds really cool.
It's a bit old. It's like from the 2000s, but like the animation and the concept is really good.
Awesome.
You brought up Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and then also thinking about Conan too. Was that all the inspirations like in there for this? Personally for me, I was seeing a bit of like it in there with like the kind of kid version and the adult version and the very basic description of it, but just like, so it's just fascinating how I guess the question is, taking that all together and throwing in magic, is that kind of like your aim, and that's like a blueprint for all of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. The It comparison, I think, is a very apt one, but it's sort of funny because like that was not that book, as much as I love it, and I've read it probably 4 or 5 times since junior high.
Wow.
It was not on my mind when I was writing this book. Stephen King was very much on my mind when I was writing my first book, which I think is a more, straightforward horror novel. But I think it's just evidence of how deeply ingrained it is in my psyche that like everybody's like, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Fair enough. I'll own it. But so I made a mistake when I sold my first novel, in that I didn't already have another novel in the oven. And It took me a while to get moving again. And part of the problem, part of what kept me from starting for so long, was I didn't have an idea for another, what I would consider straightforward horror novel. It was only when I felt like I had permission, or gave myself permission, or however you want to say it, to sort of genre hop a little bit, that I finally was able to kind of unlock and find a story that I felt like I could tell, that didn't just feel like I was recycling elements or ideas from cosmology. Like, not that I'll never have another horror idea again, but that I had said everything I could think of at that time to say about horror as a genre, and what was interesting to me or what I could bring to it at that point, and needed to kind of step sideways in order to find something new to talk about, if that makes sense. So adding the magic was kind of the key to unlocking this novel for me.
No, that like it. Yeah, that totally makes sense. It is interesting in this space where it feels like you kind of have to stick, and some people don't, but that kind of feeling of having to be stuck in the genre and like, I have to write in this genre because people expect it, or this is what I'm familiar with. But I appreciate it, and I think it's fun to go outside of it. And so seeing what you did with this was like, it's a perfect example. It's like you can see the touchstones in there, you can see the horror in there, but you were doing something different and unique for you and for everybody, So like I appreciated that. I thought that was a really cool idea. And it was fun because it was like to go back to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which if you haven't read, anyone who hasn't read it or listeners who haven't read it, it's definitely worth reading. It's a big book. But that one, even like as I was reading it, like I was on the verge of getting back into horror reading, and not that this is a horror book, but it definitely touches on some of those elements in there. So it was just, you bringing it up made me think, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense that that was kind of linked in there.
Yeah, I think that the magic in that book is pretty scary in a lot of ways. Like it's really interesting because like it's so charmingly told and dry and witty.
Yeah.
But then like these really frightening things happen to the characters, and it's all the more startling because of how it's written. I think that is my favorite novel. It is a big book and it does take a while to get going, but I think it definitely rewards the reader in the end, for sticking with it.
Yeah.
But I wanted a little bit of that for myself for my book. So hopefully I stole a little of that shine.
Oh, I think you did, like, especially because like until you mentioned it, but like even as I was reading it, I was kind of like thinking that I was like, this feels like this, just because there's this, especially with the professor, and everything like that, it just made me kind of have that feeling, and I couldn't put a name to it until you said it, and I was like, oh yeah.
About the characters, like there are like we are in the perspectives of four of them, like these four friends.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you think you related to the most?
Personally, I mean, I had to find ways to relate to all of them in order to tell the story. But the one that I think I am most haunted by, or that I ended up pouring the most of myself into, as far as an actual point of view character, would be Athena, actually. I think that her moral struggle throughout the book, because in a lot of ways, not that I am the smartest and most talented of my friends, I know people who are smarter and more talented than me, but in terms of that natural wrestling between empathy and pragmatism is something that I have definitely struggled with internally. I don't know how much my friends would say based on my actual actions and stuff, but like in my heart, the things that I worry about myself is that I am not warm enough, that I am a little cold, that I am a little tempted towards that darker path. And so I feel like that sort of balance that she's trying to find throughout the book is really the story of me trying to find my own internal balance between, the connection to my friends, which is what keeps me human, and my pursuit of, knowledge, be it, my writing career or, whatever. And so I think she is definitely the one that ends up reflecting the most of my worries about myself, my own anxieties.
Yeah, I totally get that. I actually related most to her as well. Yes, I'm also struggling to go on the dark path.
Well, good. Nice to meet a fellow struggler.
I mean, when you have anxiety and OCD, that kind of is the point.
Yeah,
It's an eternal struggle.
Yeah, I don't have the OCD, but I definitely have the anxiety.
Yeah.
I felt for the Hal character and just like all the crap that was thrown at him.
I did enjoy his adult version. His adult version was fun. I just love the cynical part of him.
Yeah.
The what part of him?
His cynical side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Hal was an interesting challenge because he's somebody who has objectively, at the start of the book, it's the first sentence, done this bad thing. And it's sort of this interesting exercise as a storyteller of, can you win the audience over to his side, despite the fact that you're kind of laying out in the opening chapter, like, he killed somebody, and he is facing prison time for that. And sort of not excusing it, but explaining it, and also paving a path for redemption. I thought was a really interesting, and that was actually where I started. It's interesting. Athena sort of took over the book as I wrote, because when Hal was sort of my way in, he was the first character I had, because I was really interested in exploring that sort of moral, not ambiguity, but struggle, I guess. And Athena sort of took over the book. She grew as a character. But yeah, I have a very soft spot for Hal. For sure.
He just felt like in the beginning, like he was embodying what all people, like all us millennials, are like suffering through right now. So like 30-year-old millennials, we're so tired. We're like, oh, we just can't be bothered.
Yeah,
so tired.
He's definitely over it when you meet him.
Yeah.
I always like to figure this out in writing wise, because, and the question is, the story not only is broken up in time, but also broken up in character. And I like to kind of pick writers' brains and on that choice, and like, how was the writing process for doing it that way? Did you kind of do all one time, or did you write kind of straight through it? Like, how did you kind of build that structure that you have in this?
So when I wrote it, I wrote an initial outline, which I gave to my agent, and he gave to the editors of Cosmology, and they were like, yeah, go write that. And then I put that outline away. Like, I was hoping that they would buy it based on the outline, but they were like, come back with a finished book and we'll talk. And I was like, all right, fair enough. But I put that outline away and I didn't really look at it, and I just wrote the book. I wrote straight through. I didn't look at the outline again. I just went from my memory of it. And I just kind of wrote until I got to the end. And then, I took that first draft and then I re-outlined the book from that draft. So basically what I did was, I bought a cork board and multicolored index cards and push pens, different color for each point of view character, and basically outlined the book section by section, year by year. And in the present tense, it's all in 2019 but even those sections, and sort of looked at by color, just visually, like who was showing up where, what events were happening. And sort of backwards engineered from that, like, oh, Aaron hasn't shown up for like 4 chapters or something. So maybe we need to, and trying to find a way to kind of keep the ball in the air, while also figuring out for each major story event, whose point of view was most important to be in. And arranging, so it was kind of this big puzzle I made for myself, where I had to make sure that I was sticking to the rhythm I'd established, but also making sure that we landed in the right character's head for the right moments, and sort of working backwards from that. And that was something that actually went on throughout the editing process because, things change, the story grows and evolves. And every time we would have to make one of those changes, like there were certain big moments that were in one character's head that it was like, oh, actually, this makes a lot more sense if we're in Aaron's head for this, for example. And so then I would have to figure out like, okay, well, how do we rearrange the surrounding chapters to make sure that we're playing fair by the structural rules, but also getting to have this moment with her. So it was a really interesting puzzle, but I think I tend to think structurally as a writer. I tend to think in terms of the scaffolding. So I think that it's a puzzle I enjoyed, even if it was a lot of work. So does that answer the question?
Yes. No,
Okay,
that
cool.
that helped a ton because as I was like going through it just for listeners, it's broken apart in years, but then also those sections are broken up in chapter for character. And so it's a great way to do it because you're kind of figuring things out as the reader, what's going on and who we're in and what they're doing. But as a writer, I was just like, oh my God, I was like just impressed by this because it all works, obviously. But it works. I enjoyed the structure of it because I enjoyed being able to see it not only from like points of view, but from time. And you kind of I found myself wanting to be like, okay, I'm ready to see what happened to this person or like what this event is and how does this play in with this, like especially the first part of the book. It has like that mystery of I guess we can say it's like a school reunion, right? It's a reunion, I think. And so you kind of have that, like, plus things are happening, and I'm trying not to spoil certain things with like pigeons and stuff like that. But like, so you have all these things happening, and then when you jump back into the time, you're like, oh, I'm really excited to see how this plays out and where this goes, and it works to keep the mystery and to keep you going. You're like, I can do one more page or one more chapter because I need to see where this is going. So yeah, it totally works. And it's a fascinating to kind of, especially like talking about like fantasy, like George R. R. Martin obviously has his books are broken up by character in chapters and stuff like that. So that mindset, I always just try to figure out how that mindset works. Also, as a funny little side, I loved your little dig at Robert Jordan.
Oh God, yeah.
When I saw that, I was just like, it's funny. Even back in, was it 97? I think it was just like, I'll wait till it's done, and we're like, it'll never be done.
Not in his lifetime.
Well, it was
anyway.
done. Only
Fair.
not his lifetime.
He won't finish it.
Right. Brandon Sanderson will have to swoop in and that cleanup.
Yeah. So, but no, I like that, and so I always try to figure that out, how people do that, so that helps a ton.
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
I don't know, Rich, I've been talking a lot. Do you have any questions?
I was going to actually ask a little bit about one thing that kind of piqued my curiosity, and maybe I misread one aspect of it, but I'm thinking of the tournament scene when they go back past the tournament, and they mention the whole like these dissident users come from like a sect of like they're the main group of dissident users who have like a Christian background.
Mm-hmm.
And did you kind of in your head create like different religions with different dissident users? Like how does that kind of process all go together? Because you mentioned other groups, but they don't really expand.
Right. And that might be well, so what I did with this book, I did not do a lot of preliminary world building, and that was another piece of the puzzle I ended up making for myself. It was more about telling the story from the point of view of the characters and seeing what they would see. And it's interesting, the tournament was the last section that was added to the book. That whole conference was not in the version of the book that I sold. And we added it for a couple of reasons. One, to explore the world a little more. And two, I really felt like Erin needed a section that was really about her and about what she was going through and her own struggle. She was the character I sort of found last in terms of arc. And so I wanted to explore a little bit of the world and show a little bit of the power structure that was at play, at least in the United States, you know, the middle to upper class white part of the United States in the late 1990s in this community. And I was really basing a lot of that on my own experiences in Texas as a kid who got suckered into so many conservative religious events by being told, like, oh yeah, we're having a youth mixer, come on out. And then it turned out to be a sermon or something.
We're going to have pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, I got nothing else going on Friday night. Let's do this. And then it's like, oh, they want me to, you know, get saved. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And it's something I don't know that I have a great thesis about, but it's something that I've explored in both novels, is the way that, and I would by no means hang this on all Christianity, but there is a definite toxic version of Christianity, which I was exposed to again and again and again as a young person in Texas in the 90s. And I'm sure still exists. I've just, you know, I'm not getting invited to the mixers anymore. So thankfully they know better now. But I wanted to explore that a little bit. And I thought it was really interesting, the idea that, that those same power structures would extend out of the non-dissonant world and into the dissonant world, that somehow they'd managed to infect this as well, and poison it in their own way and hold it back. And it's sort of interesting because it gives you a look, because you've got Professor Marsh, who's one pole, right?
Yep.
And he's technically right about a lot of things factually, but also morally, he's very questionable. But then the other pole is this Christian theocracy, essentially running this like low key, like Protestant Christian theocracy too. Sort of that has a stranglehold on the other pole. So there aren't any like good, and I'm putting air quotes around that, authority figures in this world that we've seen yet. And I thought that was something interesting to explore. As far as what other religious groups or ethnic groups would relate to, like we talk about it just a little bit, but I think what you're seeing there is I am nervous about venturing into it because that goes so far outside my lived experience. And I hope that I will have the courage, if I get to do more books in this world, to sort of explore that a little bit more, with, the proper research and sensitivity readers and whatnot. But it is definitely something that I think there's a lot of room to get deeper into. But I didn't have the space or the bravery to make that trip this time out, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah,
I have a
makes
follow-up.
sense, yeah.
I have a follow-up question to this now.
Okay.
Why is the boss a kid an asshole? I'm
see how
sorry.
it is.
I had to.
I don't think
I'm
he's an
not
asshole
the Boston
because
guy
he's from
here. That's
Boston.
why I'm just like.
I actually, he's a character that I would love to explore more, especially since we meet him as an adult, and he's much less of he's kind of a blowhard as an adult, but he's not I would not consider him an asshole anymore by the time we meet him as an adult when he's selling to Athena. I think he's a little bit of a blowhard still, but
yeah. But
I
when
would
he's,
definitely.
When he's a teenager, he's a fucking asshole.
I mean, like, just from a story perspective, I needed a character who could sort of seem to be seducing Erin away from her friends, and she needed a chance to make a choice. So that's really all that is. It's nothing to do with the fact that he's from Boston.
Yeah.
I've been to
I-
Boston and I loved it, and I would love to visit again. But yeah, he's an asshole because I needed an asshole.
No, I get that. I just want to be funny.
But I would love to explore Garrett more if I get to do more stories in this world. I think he's got some really interesting potential as somebody who grew up in an actual dissonant enclave, which we haven't seen yet, and somebody who's also like out having adventures, Indiana Jones style with dissonant artifacts in the world.
So do you have like notes for more books, or does it have to do with like what will happen with the sales of this book? This one.
I have. Both things are true. I have notes. And when I originally pitched this book, and the version I sold actually ended on a massive cliffhanger, and my editor was like, let's tell one complete whole story and leave the door open, because we just don't know. Like, I'm not contracted. Like, they bought this book. They didn't buy a 3-book deal. You know what I mean? And so I have notes. I have an outline for at least one more book. And I hope that the sales and demand are there, because I'm ready to get started, but it's up to my publisher. And it's interesting because I'm being published by Pantheon, who is a literary publisher, right? It's not like this book is coming out from Tor or something, who is in that genre space and probably would be more comfortable with, the 3-book deal. I think because my publisher deals more in, one-off literary novels, they take a little more convincing, maybe. So it's sort of a good and a bad thing, because I get this upmarket placement, right, with Pantheon, but they're a little less prone to the genre conventions of like, yeah, this is a series. Let's at least sign for 3. So I think I'm going to have to earn each book individually based on sales, at least at this point. So I really hope that I get to do more. It's not guaranteed yet.
All right.
Well, I will say, I hope you get to too, because this would be a really cool world to like flesh out more.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like we just get a taste of it here, but it'll be cool to like really kind of be able to see what you're able to go with it, or get out of it, I should say.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Fingers crossed.
So another.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, I said one more question for me, because I can have the questions that I think. What was the inspiration behind the Owen character? The Renfield of the story, so to speak.
Yeah, I got good Renfield vibes from him too.
I mean, I think he's much sweeter than Renfield, but yeah. In terms of
he's
his
much sweeter than
function,
Renfield's.
But we're talking about like an unfortunate Renfield here. Like, he's not willing.
No, he does not want to be Renfield. He just wants a boyfriend.
No.
Yep.
It's interesting. So I wrote a draft of the book, and there was another character who was essentially in the Owen spot. And what I realized by the time I got to the end was that I didn't have any gay characters in the book. And that was something that was really lovely about publishing A Cosmology of Monsters, was I had actually heard from a lot of LGBTQ readers who'd really been touched by the Eunice character, who who kind of is a closeted gay teen in the 90s in Texas and really is put through the ringer. And I wanted to I wanted to, I guess, make sure that I was again reaching outside my own experience a little bit. Like this book is sort of me taking tiptoes, like Athena being a Black woman, for example. That was a big step for me. I was very scared about getting that wrong. And I wanted to include a gay character just because I thought I had this really great spot. Originally, that character was a straight teenage girl. And I was like, you know what? We've already got two major POV women characters. And I had a friend, and he's thanked in the acknowledgments. His name is Austin, who I was working with at the time I was writing the book. And I really wanted to kind of pay tribute to him a little bit too. And so I went back and I reconfigured the character, and I think that the character of Owen ended up much richer and fuller than the character I had already written, the teenage girl character, and his arc. I don't want to give too much away. Became a much sweeter, tenderer thing. I don't know, and what he was going through was so much scarier because the moment you meet him, he's already kind of got his back against the wall because he's stuck in this trailer with an abusive father, and he's just looking for any shred of acceptance or way out or anything. And that made him a lot easier to connect to and to write, and made the story a lot more interesting. And also, I thought it was really useful to have him in the present tense sections because he is in the company of one of the book's major villains, without giving anything away. And so you're getting a glimpse into what that villain is doing as well, and sort of how he's operating. At the same time, you're getting our heroes who have no idea what the bad guy is up to. So it was a way to kind of add an extra camera, I guess, to the set in a way. It was a very organic process. It was just how he came about, and I'm really happy he's there. I can't imagine the book without him now. That I don't know if that answers the question or not. I know you were maybe wanting more about the Renfield of it all, right?
No, I was just kind of curious just about the character's origins in general. So the Renfield thing was more kind of me making a joke because he's kind of in the Renfield's place.
Yeah, and I always thought Renfield was a fascinating character anyway. Somebody who's in thrall to, Dracula. And what does that actually look like in practice, from your point of view as a modern person who's kind of drafted into this situation? That to me was some of the scariest stuff for me, getting closest to like what I'm most terrified of, being like kidnapped or forced into a situation and sort of stuck with somebody under threat of death. So that was all really fun to explore.
I will say that the villain reveal was great.
Oh, thank you.
Because I didn't see that coming at all. And I was like, whoa, wait, what?
Awesome.
So that was the standout moment of the book. But anyone else have any questions? I feel like I've been hogging questions.
This is good. It's tricky because, like we said, we don't want to. Yeah. It's a new book, so we don't want to go into too many specifics.
I'd love to get into like the Blade of Woe and stuff like that, but I feel like that might get a bit too specific. So, but we'll see. The Code influences also. Big fan of those. But to our audience, you can pick up the Dissonance at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any book retailer. It's put up by Pantheon, so it's a nice big publisher, and it's really anywhere books are sold. And Shaun, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
I am on Facebook. I think I'm Shaun.Hamill18 there. I am at Shaun Hamill on X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter because I'm a rebel. I'm at Shaun Hamill on. Oh,
we don't dead name on this podcast, but Twitter's an exception.
Twitter's an exception.
Fair,
That's fair.
I'm on Instagram. I'm at Shaun Hamill. I'm on TikTok, but I don't really post there. I just use it to watch things my friends send me. So that might be a fruitless thing. But yeah, those are the main places I hang out online. And I'd love if anybody stopped by to say hi.
Perfect. And Vitlame, what about you?
I'm still on Twitter at VitlameS. And I also have a website, VitlameMistAuthor.com. And I'm lurking on Instagram.
Perfect. And Matt, what about you?
Yeah, also still on Twitter at BrandenburgDM, and I have a website, matt-brandenburg.com.
And you can catch me on Twitter with @IntoStaring and on Instagram with @Rudy53088. And this is Richard Gerlach saying keep staring.